and welcome to this episode of Three Questions. I'm Greg Michlig, President and CEO at CUInsight.com, and it's great to welcome back Lawrence Buckley, Senior Vice President of Business Development at DataOceans. Lawrence, thanks for being back with us again.
It's a pleasure, Greg, always. Thanks for
Yeah,
having me.
and we've talked a little bit before. We've gone through some questions on some other interviews that we've had. We've got three more queued up for you, and let's jump right into those.
Let's go.
So, based on your experience working with credit unions, what factors are driving the push toward greater adoption of digital communications?
Across the credit unions that we work with, we're seeing a growing focus on digital member communications. So, many of the members that, we're working with and our credit unions are surveying say they want convenient access to all their statements, their notices, all the other information that's available. It's traditionally printed. They want that through a channel that they prefer. That could be text, that could be email, it could be other channels, as we're talking about here later. At the same time, credit unions are looking to increase that digital, e-delivery side of things to reduce the reliance on paper and postage, and find a better way to manage those expenses. The USPS is going to continually raise rates there, and it's going to become a continued budget constraint for folks. So as we look for ways to create a more connected experience, make that easier to manage behind the scenes, it's becoming a focus for clients and really, an easy opportunity for efficiency there. Ultimately, the goal isn't to send the communications digitally. It's to get the member comfortable receiving and, more importantly, engaging with the credit union on those communications as they go through the member journey. This starts at the onboarding and flows through the long and hopefully fruitful relationship, right? Growing and broadening the number of services that they take advantage of. For example, we've seen credit unions increase e-delivery adoption by as much as 60% for some of our clients. That allows them to reduce, their reliance on print and postage. But we've also seen the way that they've been able to actually reduce their unit costs in print and postage by just being a little more sophisticated and leveraging who they are and their footprints. And that helps generate substantial savings for them, and they can also reinvest that into the membership. The other area we've seen a lot of interest in and real results in has been driving self-service transactions. Some of our credit unions are driving thousands of additional transactions through self-service channels, and that allows them to divert, in some use cases, as much as 75% of the calls that would come in. This helps reduce friction and frees up the staff as well to focus on the more important and strategic interactions. So it's not always just about cost savings, right? I mean, it's effectively about driving that member experience, increasing that engagement, and driving operational efficiency over there. So that's really, the strategic starting point for folks, and then it becomes about how do you take that to the next level and look at member behavior and engagement over time.
And that's a great question. You just gave some examples of how to do some of the engagement. So what approaches are proving most effective for credit unions looking to improve their member engagement and business outcomes?
I think it starts with, making it easy for the member to do that, making it easy for them to manage their preferences, manage their communications, and to engage, through the online banking applications that are out there. Giving the member self-service access to all those documents, especially the ones that traditionally go print and mail, is a first, is a low hurdle for a lot of folks there. That allows them, to give preference management to the member, allow them to, tell them how they want to be communicated with and where they want to engage. Email isn't the only option, right? Credit unions are using email, they're using text, they've got online banking. There's other digital touch points that can be taken advantage of as well, right? Through social media or anything else. But I think having a clear strategy and how you're going to do that and where the journey goes is critical. So looking at that is foundational. As a credit union is thinking about where they go, they should be thinking about what each communication is saying and how it could be sent, what action ultimately they want the member to take. What we find and what our credit union clients are seeing is that the most effective strategies do more than just deliver information. They help the member understand, engage, and take action. Whether that's making a payment, looking at an offer that they have, understanding an impact to their account. It's a pretty, there's a lot of things that can happen, right? So understanding where the member needs to go is a critical part of deciding how you send those communications. And at the same time, it's obviously there's cost savings advantages to driving these channels, and it's also reducing that cost element on the service centers. We're seeing a lot of folks look at newer channels there. We're looking at where RCS comes into play, and I think we'll talk more about that here in a second. But our RCS is a new channel that we're seeing a potential to really transform how our clients are servicing their members.
So you kind of leaned in a little bit to that, and you gave a number of examples of different types of delivery and digital communications. So where do you see the biggest opportunities for credit unions to continue modernizing their communications?
I think it starts with taking a broader view on their digital communication strategy. So it's not just about replacing paper and cutting out postage, but being intentional in how you create a connected, engaged experience across the member journey, and getting the member comfortable engaging digitally is the first step. As credit unions continue to expand the channels that they engage members with, it's going to provide lots of opportunities for success and friction. So it's an important thing to understand. We've spent a lot of time as an industry training people to look for spam and training people to look for secure things. So, we need to take the lessons that we've learned from that and how we roll out these new channels. But email is going to remain important for a lot of things. But I think when you're looking for interactive and more immediate responses, we're seeing text messaging and RCS is the new version of that. I liken it to the moving from fax to email, right? You have a whole lot more flexibility with what you do there, but it's going to create the opportunity to be more interactive and more engaged and more targeted in what you do. If you're not familiar, if anybody listening to this isn't familiar, RCS is a new technology for texting. You're probably seeing this in your messaging app, but it allows you to, as a credit union, to send more specific, engaged communications out. It allows those communications to hit the message inbox as opposed to an email inbox, which is a much cleaner, more engaged, historically location. And that can be accompanied with additional visual inputs, buttons, and things like that. That really makes it simpler to do things like make a payment, view a document, update preferences. So it's kind of taking the self-service and pushing it in front of the consumer much more engaged way. So again, the whole goal here is to continue to meet the consumer where they're at, get the member to talk to you about what they want, when they want it, and really look at that process. As we look at it, some of the biggest opportunities around that are modernizing the structure of the lending journey, right? Getting in front of the member earlier in that process. For example, too, in this space, especially if you have members who are applying for loans, they're a member, you can engage with them in that channel earlier through those digital processes. We also see the use of adverse actions in this process. So when you're declining credit, trying to move that out of a print channel into a more proactive, digitally engaged opportunity earlier. But also with the credit union model, gives us an opportunity to engage that member and counsel them on how they can get better access to credit in the future by doing important steps to improve their credit scores and other factors that may impact their ability to get. So as we look at those and other regulated documents, there's just a lot of information that can be sent through these digital channels. We see so many use cases that are untapped right now that are just pure opportunities for improving the customer experience, driving engagement, and ultimately that all flows through to the bottom and the top line if we're doing it appropriately. So again, if anyone is out there looking for what's next, there's a lot of things that are moving, and it's important to look at the entire journey, where the member goes for all of these different product offers, and really how do you orchestrate that across the enterprise. So, we see a lot of opportunity there, and happy again to talk to anybody. And I know we're going to be writing some articles for you all, and look forward to kind of engaging more with the credit union community here.
Outstanding. Yeah, gave some good examples. And as a digital media company, you're speaking our language when you're talking about a lot of these things. There are parallels there. And Lawrence, I appreciate you taking some time to join me once again and sharing those examples and that great information.
I appreciate it, Greg. Thanks so much. Look forward to the next.
Yep, me too. And that content on CUInsight.com as well that you're going to be writing. So Thanks again, and thank you to all who tuned in for this 3 questions video interview. We will see you next time.